Tu necessitas perguntar tu mesmo importante pergunta. E a pergunta existe. Eu vou aprender, eu vou aprender espanhol e não siga, ou eu vou aprender espanhol e me pés. Now, you need to ask yourself an important question. Are you going to learn Spanish sitting down, or are you going to learn more Spanish on your feet? Now, se tu queres aprender espanhol em sus pés, tu vas a necesitar várias coisas. Outra vez, tu necessita uma bicicleta. Segundo, tu vas a necessitar pulseiro. Now, if you're going to learn Spanish on your feet, you're going to need a bike. You're going to need one of these Garmin watches. Now, this is a Garmin Instinct. And the reason I'm bringing this watch up is because it's about 100 degrees out here and it's headed towards 108. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this watch over and see right there, you can see my heart rate, where it went to a high of 173 and then to a low of 37. Now, the reason why that's important is because you want to watch your heart rate as the temperature increases or as the temperature decreases, depending on the seasonality when you're outside. Okay, a reason que este pulseiro está importante es porque con este pulseiro tú puedes saber los golpes de tu corazón y tú estás en una área que está peligroso, tú puedes ver, los golpes de mi corazón están muy altos o los golpes de mi corazón están muy abajo de nivel normal, así yo tengo un problema. Now, here's some other things you're going to need. This is a Malaysian Kyocera telephone. Now, it doesn't matter which brand you get. You can get a Caterpillar telephone that'll do this exact same thing. But you can drop this thing, you can immerse it in water, and what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to translate. If you ever want to use your phone to translate for another person, this is the perfect snatch and grab phone. The person can snatch and grab this phone. You can grab it right back. The phone can fall. They can have a knife and stab into this phone. They can shoot this phone. Chances are this phone is just going to take a licking and keep right on ticking. So it's the perfect translation tool if you're going to be translating on the go. You're going to be walking, running, biking, and you just need to pull somebody to the side and say, hey, what's this, what's that, what's whatever, you know. And let me see if I can get the translator up and give you a little demonstration. Now, this phone doesn't have a hell of a lot of power, but it does have a lot of memory storage space. And so let's see if we can get to Google Translate. Okay. We're going to go over here to Google Translate. And when we get over here, and let's say that you're in a conversation with somebody, let's change our language that we're going to speak into. We're going to change it to Portuguese. And this is going to be a very important consideration. Okay, I changed the language to Portuguese. Now, I want it to come out in French. Now, there's a very important reason why I want it to come out in French. Here, watch. Okay. Eu vou à loja. Oh, let's go. Et où va la loge? French.
Je vais loin.
Okay, loge, it doesn't have right. It should say je vais à magazine. But I can change this and say, I can go back and to do a word that it's going to translate because it went longer, which means it went longer means it went very long, but that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say au revoir la loge. Okay, but now, okay, here we go again. Okay. Eu quero ir à escola. E onde está que a escola? See, watch.
O que é pior escola e onde está que escola?
Now watch in French.
Quelle est la pire école et où est cette école?
Okay. Now, if we go to Google Maps, let's see if we can get to Google Maps quickly. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. There it is, Google Maps. Now, this phone, the problem with this phone is that this phone is only going to give you directions in Spanish. So you don't really want to use this phone outside of Asia for directions. But if you use the phone that I'm recording on, it's going to have the directions in French. So if you're in a Spanish-speaking country, you want your directions in French. If you're in a Portuguese-speaking country, you want your directions in French. If you're in a French-speaking country, you want your directions in Spanish. Not in Portuguese, in Spanish. The French will figure out Portuguese, but they won't probably figure out Spanish. If you are in another country, you might want your directions in German. So you're going to have to be prepared with your, what you would say, and I would say, I would call this a combat phone. You want to be prepared with a combat phone that you can talk into walking up and down the street if you have to. Somebody snatches the phone, grabs the phone, it's cool because the phone didn't cost you that much. And if you got to grab the phone back, you're not going to break the phone. If you got to fight with this phone, you're not going to break the phone. So you're going to need a combat phone. Now, yo no voy a decir todo lo que en español, solamente en inglés, pero también tú vas a necesitar un GoPro. Ok, yo voy a mostrarte un GoPro. Porque tú tienes la vida activa, tú estás en la vida activa, tú no quieres aprender español solamente en un silla o en una universidad o una cosa como esta, tú quieres aprender en su paz, en acción, corriendo, andando, cualquier movimiento. So, you're going to need a GoPro because one of the reasons you're going to need a GoPro, and you're going to need a GoPro in combination with the throwaway phone, and I wish I had known this a long time ago, but you got a GoPro and a throwaway phone, you can watch yourself talk. Because the vast majority of the time, for the first couple years that you're speaking Spanish, what you're going to be watching is the mouth of the other person. Now I'm going to repeat this in Spanish. Okay. Tú necesito un GoPro porque también tú necesito un teléfono que está basura. Si solamente puedo tirar este teléfono en basura, tú puedes luchar por este teléfono, tú puedes golpear a una otra persona con este teléfono y no importa, porque el teléfono no está bueno. Es solamente un barato teléfono que está muy duro. Y este es porque se llama este teléfono un duro last. Ok. La razón que tú necesitas un GoPro es porque la vasta mayoría del tiempo, en los dos, tres, cuatro primeros años que tú estás hablando español, tú quieres ver. Tú quieres ver la boca de la otra persona que está hablando. Y cuando tú estás un niño, 90% del tiempo, un bebé, un infante, un menino, desculpe, un niño, ellos están concentrados en la boca de la hablante. ¿Sí? Y cuando tú concentras en la boca de la hablante, tú ves cómo la lengua está moviendo, la lengua contra los dientes y todo esto, la abertura de la boca y todo esto, y tú ves estas cosas. Now, si tú tienes una cámara de video, tú puedes usar un mira, pero un mira está una vez. Con una cámara, tú puedes ver su boca por siempre, por eternidad. Yo espero que cuando yo comience con idiomas, lo primero, lo segundo, lo tercero, cualquiera, yo espero que yo tenga una cámara, así yo puedo ver mi boca y los movimientos de mi boca. And I'm saying, you know, if when I started learning any language, the first, the second, the third, the fifth, whatever, I wish I would have had a video camera to look at how my mouth was moving. So that if I had to say the, I could say, hey, you know, I'm doing a labial dental the, or I'm doing arribio te, see, te, or I'm doing a este con sa, see, porque in Portuguese you're gonna go he, see, gente, see, gente, okay? And one of the things that you say to anybody if they want to learn Portuguese, you say this, cheap shit, cheap shit, cheap shit, cheap shit. And you tell them, hey, watch your mouth when you make these. Not because you're saying something that's rude. It just so happens that particular phrase really, really is something that you're going to use over and over and over and over in Portuguese. Peixe, gente, phenomenas. See, you're going to use that S in cheap shit, cheap shit, cheap shit, cheap shit all the time. And those are the three incidences in English where you're going to use that. Okay, now, I can't do the R in Spanish really well. But if you have a camera, you have a GoPro, you have a throwaway phone, you can watch the other person when they do the R. You can do what's called a retroflective R. And you can concentrate on their mouth. You can say, hey, yo quiero hacer que are, pero yo no puedo hacer que are. Yo puedo concentrar en tu boca y yo voy a usar esta cámara. Tengo un video de tu, porque yo quiero pôr un video del movimiento de su lengua cuando tú estás haciendo que are. See? And so you tell them that. And then you take a video of that R, and then you can watch it over and over and over again as they make that R. So you're going to need various tools. And it all depends, like I say, do you want to learn Spanish on your feet or in a seat? And I'm going to tell you, there are various practitioners who are teaching Spanish over the internet. The best is a guy that is out of England, and his channel is called Spanish with Juan, and he's actually a Spanish professor. And when you watch his videos, he's got a GoPro and he's on the move. He's out there, he's talking to people. I mean, he's moving around. He's out there getting in where he fits in. Ok, yo voy a decir esto otra vez. Ok, ¿tú quieres aprender español en su pies o tú quieres aprender español en un silla? Now, es un hombre que enseña gente español en la internet y se llaman Juan. Español con Juan. Él es un profesor en Inglaterra. Él nació en España y original está de España. Y él dijo que él no gusta España, pero él gusta la gente, pero no gusta el lugar. Así él está allá en Inglaterra. Ok. Cuando tú ves el canal de él está en movimiento. Él está enseñando. Él va a enseñarte español en los pies. Nada en un silla, en los pies. Él está hablando con la gente en todo el mundo. Hablando con gente en Italia, hablando con gente en Inglaterra, hablando con gente en España, hablando con gente en París, en Francia, hablando con gente en Alemania, porque el abuelo de él enseñale alemán cuando él estaba un niño. So, what I'm saying is that you're going to need these various tools so that you can learn Spanish actively. Now, if you want to take a more sedentary approach to learning Spanish, the guy who I can recommend is Kuru Paul. Paul is going to go out of a textbook, well, not really a textbook, but it's called a New Spanish Reference Grammar. I've had that book about 23 years, and I always carried it around with me everywhere. And it's about, I'd say, nearly 500 pages. Read every one of them. Heavy, dense reading. Kuru Paul was the first person that I saw, and I mean, I lived with an English professor for 7, 8 years, so it's not like I didn't live with people that have no credentials. So, and I've always been around people who've had credentials, but I never heard anyone who had credentials, even in Spanish, talk about that book. It's an excellent book. Kuru Paul takes you straight through that book. Now, in a lot of ways, he takes a page out of the guy's book and he talks about it on the internet. So Paul is going to teach you Spanish while you are sitting down. And certainly you're going to have to sit sometime to learn Spanish. But what Juan is talking about and what I am talking about is Spanish with total immersion, and that is Spanish on your feet. And what we're showing you is you get out there, you go over there to Spain, Mexico, Portugal, Zamboanga del Ser. You go wherever Spanish is spoken, and you go there and you speak it with them. Now, yo voy a repetir un parte de esto en español. Yo estoy diciendo que, hey, mira, si tú quieres un libro y una persona que vaya solamente enseñarte de un libro es Kuru Paul, y él vaya a usar este libro, la nueva referencia de español, the New Spanish Reference by a guy named Bunt. Un hombre de Inglaterra se llama Bunt. Y yo tengo la edición segundo. Kuru Paul usa la nueva edición. Y también tú quieres por la nueva edición, tú puedes comprar la nueva edición con cupo y él va a darte un descuento. Y tú vas a tener un descuento y él está bien porque él va a tener un poco de dinero también. No mucho, tal vez 5 centavos, quién sabe, pero no mucho, no mucho. Así no preocupar con este pensando como un capitalista. ¿Sí? Tú enriqueces Paul y Paul puede enseñarte más español. ¿Y qué es tu meta? ¿Qué es que tú estás pensando? ¿Sí? Cuando tu profesora vive bien, tú vives bien. Okay, now this video for me is kind of long, but these are some topics that I definitely wanted to address. Now, I'm going to repeat this. Do you want to learn Spanish on your feet or in a seat? In Spanish, there is no such thing as long distance learning. So if you think that you're going to learn it over the internet, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to travel. If you think that you're going to talk to some of the 46 million Americans that speak Spanglish and they're part of the academia, they're enrolled in the academia, they have input in the academia, but if you think that you're going to learn Spanish talking to the 46 American Spanglish speakers, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. For years, I spoke Spanish in the United States. But the minute I crossed into Mexico, the Spanish was different. And when a Chicano comes to Mexico and he's speaking Spanish, they call that Chicano the exact same thing that they call me. They call that Chicano un gabacho. And even when this guy is speaking Spanish, they will still call that person un gringo. Okay. Tú piensas que no hay problema, yo voy a hablar español perfectamente porque mi vecino está en español, se habla español, mi esposa habla español, toda mi comunidad habla español y yo vivo en los Estados Unidos, yo no necesito ir a México, yo no necesito ir a España, yo no necesito ir a las Filipinas, Colombia, Brasil, nada de este. Porque yo tengo todo el mundo en mi barrio. Ok. Yo estaba hablando español por años y años y años en los Estados Unidos. Y el momento que yo crucé la frontera y entré en México, el español estaba muy diferente. Al punto que los mexicanos dijeron que yo soy un gabacho y también ellos dijeron que yo soy un gringo. Y si es un chicano que está simplemente del otro lado del Rio Grande del Norte, solamente en la otra revelación, y él entra a México, los mexicanos dirán que él es un gringo, un gabacho, inescapablemente. Cuando tú estás leyendo las propagandas en inglés, Church's Chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken, buy this, buy that. televisión en inglés, todo este va a cambiar tu español relativamente al español que ellos están hablando en un país que tiene puro español y poco inglés. Todo el mundo en México, todo el mundo en México puede hablar inglés, sin problema. Todos los mexicanos pueden hablar inglés, porque culturalmente no es un pecado si tú ves la televisión en, en inglés en México. No es un pecado si tú ves un filme, una película en inglés in Mexico. Now, I'm saying another part here. Look, every Mexican is going to speak English. The only question is ever going to be is how much. It's just like if you're in Texas, you're in Florida, you're in California. Every Floridian, every Texan, every Californian, they're going to speak Spanish. The only question is ever going to be is how much. Okay. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's good if you start speaking Spanish outside of a Spanish speaking country. That's good. But you're still going to have to get out of your seat and get on your feet and go to a place where they speak Spanish. So you can start with Curupal and advance to Juan. Because Juan is not going to give you anything in English. Juan is going to talk pure Spanish, Spanish with Juan. So, like I said, you can start with Paul, Curupal, you can start with Curupal, you can move on to Juan, but sooner or later, you're going to have to get out of that seat, strap a helmet on, get a GoPro, get a combat phone, get a bike, and take your ass to a Spanish-speaking country and see how it's done over there.